You know, some stories from history are so strange they feel more like fever dreams, whispers of madness from an age of iron and marble. This is one of those stories. It's about a command so bizarre, so completely nonsensical, that for 2,000 years it's been the ultimate proof of a mind that had utterly collapsed. Picture this. The year is 40 AD. You're standing on the northern coast of Gaul, staring out at the gray, churning waters of the English Channel. Behind you, the full might of the Roman Empire. Tens of thousands of legionaries, the most formidable army on the face of the earth, poised to invade Britain. They stand, they wait, and then their emperor, Caligula, arrives. The historian Suetonius tells us what happens next. The invasion is called off, just like that. Instead, the emperor issues a new command. He orders his battle-hardened soldiers to line up on the beach, not to fight, but to collect seashells. He tells them to fill their helmets with these spoils from the ocean, a pathetic treasure from a war that never happened. And the army? Stunned, disbelieving silence. So for centuries, the story ended there. The conclusion drawn from this moment was simple and brutally clear. This wasn't the act of a commander. This was the act of a complete madman. And honestly, the evidence for Caligula's insanity seems overwhelming. This is a guy who declared himself a living god and built temples for his own worship. He was accused of incest with his sisters, even treating one of them, Drusilla, as his wife. He famously promised to make his favorite horse, Incitatus, a consul of Rome. He burned through the entire imperial treasury in less than 2 years on grotesque luxuries. His cruelty was the stuff of nightmares, inventing new ways to torture people. And, in a moment that says it all, he once looked out over a crowd and wished the Roman people had a single neck so he could chop it off with one blow. His cruelty wasn't just on a grand scale, it was deeply personal. This was his reported standing order to his executioners. Not a quick death, no, a slow, agonizing one, designed for the maximum amount of suffering. You see, this wasn't just policy, it was pathology. So, the case seems closed, right? The seashell incident is just the most absurd entry in a long, terrifying list of a lunatic's actions. It's the punchline to the grim joke that was his reign. But what if the story isn't that simple? What if we've been told the wrong story all along? This is where things get interesting. Some historians have proposed a very different theory, one that replaces madness with something colder and maybe even more terrifying: calculated cruelty. What if the order to collect seashells wasn't the product of a broken mind at all? What if it was a deliberate act of psychological warfare against his own army? To understand this, you have to know that Caligula deeply distrusted his legions. I mean, he lived in constant fear of them, and for good reason. They were a powerful, independent force on the frontier, miles and miles away from his control. Think about it from his perspective. Years earlier, these same legions had mutiny and tried to make his own father, Germanicus, emperor. Caligula never, ever forgot that. Suetonius even tells us he secretly planned to massacre the legions he thought were disloyal. He slashed their retirement pay. An idle army is a dangerous army, and Caligula knew his soldiers were bored, resentful, and heavily armed. He was terrified of the very swords that were supposed to protect him. So, seen in that light, the order looks different. Can you even imagine a more humiliating command for a Roman legionary? To drop your sword and shield, the symbols of your honor, and scrabble around in the sand for shells like a little kid. It was a message, loud and clear. It said, "Your pride means nothing, your skills mean nothing. You are not warriors, you are my playthings, and I can make you do anything, no matter how absurd." It was an act designed to shatter their spirit. It's a compelling theory, right? It fits the profile of a paranoid tyrant perfectly. But it all still assumes one crucial thing, that the order was actually to collect seashells. And this is where the entire story, 2,000 years of history, completely falls apart because of the meaning of a single word. 2 millennia of history, the story that defined an emperor's insanity. All of it hinges on a possible mistranslation, a linguistic ghost that has haunted the historical record for centuries. Okay, so the word at the center of all this is musculi. Now, yes, musculi can mean muscles or seashells, and this is the crucial part, it was also common military slang. To Roman soldiers, musculi, which literally means little mice, was the nickname for the small engineering huts they built when setting up a camp. So let's ask the question again. Was the emperor's insane command go gather seashells? Or was it a perfectly logical, if disappointing, military order? The invasion is off, collect the musculi, dismantle the huts, we're going home. So how does something like this even happen? Well, let's break it down. 1. Caligula abandons the invasion and gives a routine order to pack up camp, using common military slang. 2. The order gets written down using the ambiguous word musculi. 3. Years later, after Caligula is assassinated, historians like Suetonius, writing for a new regime that hated Caligula, are putting his story together. They see this word, and they have a choice: record a boring military command or choose the interpretation that fits the monster they want to create. And that gives us step 4. A simple order to break camp becomes the myth of an emperor forcing his army to collect seashells. Now, this reinterpretation changes everything. Not about who Caligula was, really, but about how his story was told. And more importantly, who told it. Let's be absolutely clear about something. This does not redeem Caligula. Not for a second. The evidence we have still makes it abundantly clear he was a cruel, narcissistic, and murderous tyrant who terrorized Rome. Debunking one story doesn't erase the dozens of others. But here's the crucial point. The people who survived him, they're the ones who got to write his history. The senators he humiliated and murdered had every reason to paint him not just as evil, but as certifiably insane. It was their ultimate revenge. And this exposes a fundamental and kind of unsettling truth. History is not a perfect record of the past. It is a story shaped by bias, by political agendas, by hatred, and sometimes just by the simple mistranslation of a single word. And that forces us to ask a really difficult question, doesn't it? If a story this famous, this ingrained in our culture, could be built on such a flimsy foundation, what else do we think we know about the past that's just a story? What other truths are still out there, lost in translation?